Good afternoon. This is Jamie McKay with SFA Partners. With me is Michael Bryan, our Chief Growth Officer. This is our podcast. The purpose of our podcast, as always, is to answer questions we're getting every single day from advisors. Occasionally, though, we will have a topic that we're passionate about. Today, I'm very excited because Michael is going to talk about something that we talk about often, which is organic growth, Michael. What it means and where it's lacking in the industry. So
Right.
Please, I know that you've been dying to do this podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. The worst kept secret in our industry right now is that we're not growing. As an independent advice industry, there's a very, very slow organic growth metric. And
The headlines would obviously lead you to believe something else.
That's right. All you hear about is growth and things are getting bigger and mergers and acquisitions and growth. In fact, a lot of the larger firms that are in the M&A game will talk about growth,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll say, "Oh, we've grown exponentially."
Yeah.
And they're not lying to you. They're not lying to us. They're just defining growth as something other than organic growth.
So define organic growth.
Okay, so organic growth is, at least for the sake of this discussion, organic growth is adding new clients, adding new revenue, adding new assets without the benefit of the market,
Mhm.
right? Strip out market, and strip out any acquisition or any kind of involvement of equity that equals ownership. So when
Sure.
there's no exchange of ownership, that is considered growth here, and we're not counting the market. We're stripping that out. In other words, what are we doing to actually gain new clients or gain wallet share? Simple as that.
What our forefathers did.
Right.
Right?
The-
There was patient zero at some point in the advisory space.
That's right.
That actually had to do this.
Well, and like a lot of the terms in our industry, you could argue at the advisor level that acquiring new or trying to reach out and receive new clients is inorganic growth. For the sake of today, that counts as organic growth.
Sure.
Right? So long as you're not buying someone else's book or bringing another advisor in with existing clients. That's what we're going for.
So what's driving the lack of growth in your opinion?
Well, all right. So let's first talk about what I even mean by lack of growth. It's less than 3%. We're talking about less than 3% consistently. We're talking about a space where we know the investors are moving toward, right? Most of the advisors are moving towards or have already moved to advisory.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least they're hybrid, right? Doing commission and fee of some description, this wealth management concept. So we know that's the right space. We know it's meeting the investor need. And we know that money is flocking out of the wirehouses, out of the banks, and into our business model. Why then are we only seeing like 2.7% growth? Well, I've got a theory that there are three driving factors.
What are those?
I think M&A is ironically, M&A is absolutely negatively impacting organic growth. I think demographics,
Mhm.
right? So we'll talk maybe about investor demographics, advisor demographics. I think those are not in favor of organic growth right now. And the third one is this sort of this ethos around the concept that investment management is commoditized.
Yeah.
And so in losing a bit of a value proposition that was historic,
Mhm.
that maybe that's slowing the ability for advisors to grow their business because they maybe don't have in their back pocket what that value proposition is in its entirety.
Sure.
Those three things.
So it's funny you mentioned M&A because M&A is pretty much dominates every headline that you'll see. Why is M&A working against us as far as from an organic growth?
So think of it this way, and it's interesting in the old days when you heard about an equity transfer or you get somebody it was to infuse money into your business so that you could grow.
Yeah, you could pour it back into your business. Absolutely.
That's not what's happening. In reality, that's not what's
It's
happening.
enriching people and
It's enriching the person that's being purchased initially. Maybe that's their immediate retirement plan, and it's ultimately enriching the buyer, right? The acquirer, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But what it hasn't done is drive the growth.
Yeah.
And what has happened, is the advisors that are receiving that capital are comfortable.
Yeah.
They decide that's good. That's what I was going for, right? The acquirers in large part of the industry right now, are not in the business of growing advisory practices. They're in the business of buying, packaging, and reselling.
Well, and that's the case, right? Is so you have step one, buy, consolidate, package. Step two, sell, and then maybe somebody else is purchasing is selling yet again.
Right.
And so the multiples themselves get higher, but there's no real growth with
The
it. I get it.
focus on the new owner isn't
Yeah.
how do I help you grow your business, which is interesting, Jamie, because when you hear the pitch of a purchase, it very often is, and we'll help you grow,
Of course.
right? But in reality, it's not coming to fruition, as evidenced by less than 3% organic growth.
Yeah.
Tons of acquisition, very little growth. You would think if there were infusions into the business such that it could grow, you would think we'd go the other way.
Oh.
We'd double our growth
Sure,
metrics.
sure.
But that's not what's happening.
So Michael, from a standpoint of looking at some other underlying factors, you mentioned demographics. How are the demographics obviously playing? If you think about it, right, most advisors' books today are probably composed mainly of baby boomers and Generation Xers.
Yeah.
Obviously, those clients are aging. How do the other aspects of demographics? How is that working against us?
So obviously, something that works against organic growth is attrition. When you lose money, when the money's going out the one door, the net growth is obviously going to be negatively impacted. So you've got aging clients who are in distribution phase on their own. They're not necessarily in accumulation phase anymore. At best, they're holding steady.
Yep.
And then the money is going to the second generation, right? Generational wealth transfer is something we've all been talking about
For a long time.
We knew what was going to happen, and it's happening. And even if you're really, really good at focusing on the second generation of the family and bringing the whole family in and making sure that that alpha child is on board and is involved with the aging parent, you're still likely to lose at least 1/3 of the assets when that aging parent passes away. At your best effort, you're gonna maybe retain 2/3. So we're seeing the attrition there. We're not seeing, though, a concern from the second generation or these Gen Xers or Gen Ys. We're not seeing them run away from advice. Quite the opposite. Once they're receiving, they have real money. We all know, as a Gen Xer, I don't even know. Do you fit Gen X?
I'm a proud Gen Xer. Thank you very much for offering me in Generation Y.
Listen,
I'm not. You weren't going the other way.
It was close. It was close. But the forgotten generation has the money.
Yeah.
Right. So as we go to build the business and where do we go from here, Gen X actually has the money. But what happens when Gen X, Gen Y, and beyond start to get that transfer? They do in fact seek real advice. The robo advisor was, much overstated. So that's where the opportunity is. But for right now, there's a lot of advisors focus on, again, a little bit of complacency. They built their business, their clients have aged with them, and their clients are distributing those funds. That's going to negatively impact growth.
Sure. Well, at the same time, you have our advisor base is aging. I attended an industry conference. One of the large firms I was sitting down at a table with said that their average advisor was 61 years old.
Yeah.
This is an independent space. Obviously, I'm happy that at our firm it's much younger than that, but it's a big concern for the industry. How are those people going to be replaced?
Well, that's right. I mean, and this is nothing against the advisors that have built the business up to where we are today. We do focus on younger advisors generally because we're in growth mode. We focus on offices that are trying to grow. And that isn't to say that the 65-year-old advisor can't or shouldn't build a growth into their practice. And we'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. But generally right now, broad strokes, they're not.
Yeah.
They've got a good book. It's generating good revenue. They like their clients. They're starting to shuffle off some of their daily responsibilities to their next generation or succession plan. So it's a pretty good life. Why mess with it? So that is negatively affecting growth.
Yeah, complacency.
Complacency will kill you. Yeah.
What about bringing the next generation of advisor? I know that's a big initiative across the industry. Is bringing in the next gen advisors, which again, they behave. Their wants and needs are a little bit different. Even their aversion to risk. Some of the risk that obviously even within the independent space is something that I think we take for granted, that entrepreneurial spirit.
Good one, Jamie. You and I went to a conference not too long ago that there were a couple of really great presentations around generational differences, right? And it's my experience that every generation thinks the next generation is lazy and unwilling to
I
work
think
hard.
I heard that phrase somewhere as a child.
Yeah, you heard it from your grandfather and your grandmother, and then you heard it from your grandmother, or your mom and your dad.
You had a mean grandmother. I never heard that from my grandmother.
Well, you know, Depression era, right?
There you
The
go.
greatest generation, the
Yeah.
sacrifice they make, we didn't have to do any of
Yeah,
those
true,
things.
true.
So by definition, we must be lazy. And she may have had something there, but if you think about, for the sake of generational discussion, we could talk about the boomers versus the X versus the Y. You know, the latchkey kids,
Yep.
you know, the Gen Xers, could fend for themselves, wanted to fend for themselves, and what do you know? We had this boom in entrepreneurial spirit.
True.
Okay. There's a current theory out there, and I hope I offend a few Gen Yers out there, so that you say, "Well, that's not me," and you'll have my support. But
I'm waiting for the disclosure
yeah,
at the end of this.
A lot of the general consensus is the current generation of newer advisors is risk averse, less entrepreneurial, doesn't want to have that drive to the next step, and I'm here to tell you that is hogwash.
Yeah.
You're going to hear a lot about it. And it is absolutely correct to say there are differences in generations. The way we approach things. We heard a wonderful speech where the phrase generational hazing
Yeah.
was thrown out. You don't get to have what I have till you do what I did.
Until you walk to school in 5 feet of snow.
That's
I get
it, man.
I get
Unless
it.
you're banging on doors, unless you're trying to sell insurance to your uncle to start, you're not allowed in this business this way.
So what you're saying is obviously the path to ownership, the path to equity for next generation is just going to look different.
It's going to look different. Nail on the head. The G2, however you want to define that, the second generation, which by the way doesn't necessarily match a age demographic, but the second generation of our industry absolutely has an entrepreneurial spirit. And don't let anybody tell you different.
Sure.
But we do have to think differently about how we encourage that. We have to think differently about how G2 is going to continue or restart to grow the business. And that is going to be a digital age, and it is going to be a more targeted, so you don't have to go knocking on doors, right? You don't have to do the same things now to build the business that you did then. In fact, if you do those old techniques, you'll find it just doesn't work as well. The plate licking seminar is long dead.
Yeah. No.
Right? So you do have to do things differently, and thank goodness these younger generations do have that American entrepreneurial spirit. I stand firmly on all the challenges we face today. We can absolutely lean into that innovative entrepreneurial spirit that absolutely exists in our industry right now. It is the quintessential. So there are plenty of entrepreneurs in our space. If they want to be W-2 employees, if they want to sell out of the business and just maintain businesses, that's fine. There are places for that.
Yeah.
But that's not what's going to drive our business, and that's not what's going to drive the industry forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we have to be able to figure that out.
We have to figure that out.
So what do we do with this information? Obviously, this is two handsome gentlemen talking about this. Like, how do we save the industry, Michael?
Let's save the industry today. If everyone listens to this part, I think we'll have done it. Well, you're starting to see certainly the acknowledgement for firms like ours that this has become a bit of an issue. And the old phrase, if you're not growing, you're dying, is very, very real.
Sure.
And I do think our industry has the potential to run into a serious issue here in the next 3 to 5 years. So there's an acknowledgement that there is a growth problem. And you're seeing people now, firms like ours, hiring people specifically to address growth.
Hence, what's your title again?
Chief Growth Officer.
There you go.
And you're
Smartest decision.
You're here. You are a wise man. I do think you're seeing a lot of other firms start to realize we need someone to focus just on this one thing, to create a plan and to execute that plan.
It's got to be, I think there's so much, I've always said this, there's so much parity, so much similarity between the businesses that we run and the businesses our advisors run. It has to be intentional. We've set our firm up with everything we've done to attract advisors that are in that sweet spot that want to grow their business. And I think advisors that are focused on growth probably have to do the same.
That's exactly what we're aiming for. So just as firms at our stage are trying to understand how to grow, the advisors must. Not should, could, would. As business maintenance, growth has to be a component of your every annual business plan. I don't care, Jamie, if it's 5%. I don't care if it's 35%. I like 35%.
Sure.
But you don't have to try and double your business every few years. But you do have to say to yourself, for attrition mitigation, right, money going out the door, and as part of my strategy for being a better advisor, for making sure that new clients bring in new challenges.
Of course.
They need new
They
products.
keep you
they
sharp.
need new service. They keep you sharp as a tack, and it drives your business forward. It drives your back office forward. If you tell everyone in your office, we are planning on growing the business by X, and whatever your X is, whatever your metric is, then by nature, that back office is working towards efficiencies.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to keep doing things manually because it kind of worked. But if you're bringing in 20 to 100 new clients a year, well, you're going to have to find an efficient, effective way to do that. And when you do, you're going to see, adoption of technology. You're going to see new ways of reaching out to find new clients. So that innovation is driven by growth. So the way we save the industry, the way the industry is saved, we're not going to save the industry, but the way the industry is saved is by the advisors refocusing on what they knew 15, 20 years ago, which is that growth component has to be part of a business strategy every year, all the time.
Amen to that. New advisor, new client DNA makes everyone stronger.
And if you teach that G2 that we talked about, that one principle, you don't have to worry about how they go about their growth. They'll figure it out.
That's right.
Explain to them that growth is a necessary component. They don't have to be rainmakers the way you once were. But they have to know they have to grow the business. Let them figure it out, and they will. And tell everybody. Tell your centers of influence, tell your business partners, tell your wholesalers that you meet with, that you are in, tell your clients, certainly tell your clients.
You were in growth mode.
I'm in growth mode.
Great.
And if you do that, you're committed, your team is committed, your clients are committed, and then good things happen. And we can well outpace this sort of ridiculous 2.7% growth rate.
Excellent, excellent. Well, listen, this has been a great topic. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please join us next time when we talk about something new and something interesting.
Something really interesting.
Yeah. Thank you.